Hello everyone, I am Celine John Kanayor, a postgraduate student in English Literature from Assam Don Bosco University. Today I will be discussing The Stranger, a 1942 novel by Albert Camus, focusing specially on the philosophy of absurdism and the trial of Meursault. What if a man is sentenced to death not because he committed murder, but because he did not cry at his mother's funeral? That is the disturbing and powerful premise of The Stranger by Albert Camus. Published in 1942, this novel is one of the most important works of modern literature. It introduces us to the philosophy of absurdism, the idea that human beings search for meaning in a world that offers none. In this video, I will explain the plot of the novel, the character of Meursault, the philosophy of the absurd symbols, and what Camus ultimately wants us to understand. Let us begin. The Stranger is set in French Algeria. The protagonist, Meursault, is an ordinary office worker living a simple life. However, from the first sentence of the novel, we see that he is emotionally detached. The novel is divided into two parts. Part 1. Daily life and the murder. Meursault attends his mother's funeral and he does not cry. Instead, he complains about the heat and he drinks coffee. Society expects grief, but Meursault feels none and he refuses to pretend. The next day, he goes swimming and begins a romantic relationship with Mary. When Mary asks if he loves her, he replies that it doesn't mean anything, but he probably doesn't. This shows his emotional neutrality. Later, through his neighbor Raymond, Meursault becomes involved in a conflict that leads to a violent confrontation on a beach. Under the intense Algerian sun, feeling overwhelmed by the heat and light, Meursault shoots an Arab man. He fires one shot and then 4 more. He later explains that the sun was unbearable. The act seems driven more by physical discomfort than hatred. This moment highlights Camus' idea that human actions are something irrational and influenced by physical conditions rather than moral reasoning. Part 2. The Trial. In the second part, Meursault is arrested and put on trial. However, the trial focuses less on the murder and more on his character. The prosecutor repeatedly mentions his lack of tears at his mother's funeral, his behavior the next day, his disbelief in God. It all becomes clear that society is judging him not only as a criminal but as a moral outsider. He is condemned because he does not follow social expectations. And finally, Meursault is sentenced to death. The philosophy of the absurd. The central idea of the novel is absurdism. Camus believed that human beings naturally seek meaning, order, and purpose in life. However, the universe is silent and indifferent. The conflict between the human need for meaning and the world's lack of meaning creates what Camus calls the absurd. Meursault represents a man who accepts this reality. He does not invent false hope. He does not turn to religion for comfort. Before his execution, a priest visits him and urges him to believe in God. For the first time, Meursault becomes emotional. He rejects the priest and declares that life has no greater meaning. In that moment, he accepts what Camus calls the gentle indifference of the world, and strangely, this acceptance gives him peace. Meursault is not at evil. He does not pretend sorrow. He does not pretend faith. And society cannot tolerate dishonesty. His true crime is not murder, but it is nonconformity. He becomes a symbol of existential truth in a world built on social performance. Symbolism. Camus uses powerful symbols throughout the novel, that is the sun and the sea. The sun appears during the funeral and the murder. It represents the overwhelming force of nature and the indifference of the universe. The sea. The sea represents physical pleasure and sensory experience. Meursault lives through his senses, like swimming, smoking, feeling heat, rather than through emotional or spiritual reflection. Nature in the novel is indifferent, just like the universe itself. In conclusion, The Stranger is not simply a story about crime and punishment. It is a philosophical exploration of meaninglessness, human isolation, social judgment, and personal freedom. Meursault's final realization that the universe is indifferent allows him to face death without fear. Camus suggests that even in a meaningless world, we can achieve freedom by accepting reality honestly. And that is why The Stranger remains one of the most powerful novels of the 20th century.